What's up, guys? Real quick before we start, because I don't want to take too much of your attention away, because you need to direct it towards Pharrell and Rick Rubin, the interview. Trust me, they dropped some gems about creativity, spirituality, discipline, work. This interview will really be life changing for anyone who's on a creative journey who wants to discover their creativity, their artistic imprint, but really anyone who's trying to have a more creative attitude towards their life, whether that's problem solving or career or whatever. So I'm going to give my take sometimes on what they say, and I will try to be mindful on that because I actually want to add value. I don't want to yap just to yap, because we are in front of these two legends, and so I will be very mindful of that. That's why I will leave chapters on the YouTube line, and so if you want to skip me giving my take, you can just follow the timestamps and you can go back to the interview. But if you want to actually know how I think I can add value to what they say, you can also find that in the timestamps. So without further ado, let's get into the interview. Let's go. Rick Rubin and Pharrell, man.
Tell me about
Got my coffee.
how did the movie come to be?
Yeah, they're talking about the movie. If you haven't seen Pharrell documentary made in like a Lego format, crazy. Piece by Piece, it's called. Go check it out.
Agent at the time was just very persistent about me doing a documentary because, you know, somewhere between like 6 and 7 years ago, there was like this whole rage of like A-listers, musicians specifically. They were just doing these documentaries all over the place. And the doc space just got like it just turned hot. He's like, oh man, you got to do one on your life. And I was like, my life? No way. One, why would I want to listen to myself speak for an hour and feel that feeling of listening to a voicemail for an hour? Why would I do that? Like, also, like, I see myself in the mirror every day, and I am not curious or enthusiastic about any of my story because I know it.
Yeah.
I know what I did 2 minutes ago, 2 hours ago, 2 days ago, 2 weeks ago, 2 months ago, 2 years ago, 2 decades ago. What am I curious about?
Yeah.
I wasn't. And that's a huge issue for me because anything that I do artistically, I need to be curious and I need to feel enthusiastic about what the journey of exploration and excavation is going to be. And I just didn't see that. I just didn't think it would be interesting. But he kept pushing and he kept persisting and kept insisting. And then finally I was like, man, you really got to stop asking me about this. And he was like, look, you can do it any way you want. And at that point, it kind of like unlocked something. It unlocked a different way or vantage point of looking at the opportunity. So my brother Zane Lowe was like, actually, you know, that's when you realize, he just summed it up so well. And I was like, man, what do you mean? But he was like, you know, that's when you realize that it was an opportunity that was less about like the reflection of the past, but an opportunity to be creative.
Yeah.
And that's literally what I felt. And I just thought, okay, well, if I can do it any way I want to work with Morgan Neville, which we had discussed. You know, he's a really brilliant documentarian. You look at 20 Feet from Stardom, you know, a guy that like realizes that like one of the most powerful entities in a performer's life, you know, especially superstars, are the background singers. And to recognize that so well, that really interesting vantage point, enough to even name the film 20 Feet from Stardom, I was like, that guy's genius.
Yeah.
And he does it again with
Mr. Rogers.
Mr. Rogers, the Fred Rogers doc.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, I'd give that guy complete autonomy to my story.
Yeah.
And autonomy to my catalog to use as he sees fit. But I want to do it in Lego.
How did the Lego idea come?
I knew that it'd never been done before. And if
It
Lego
never
said
been done
yes,
before.
it was going to be crazy. All the stuff that we get to put in Lego.
What was your connection to Lego?
As a child, my earliest, fondest memories of toys were Lego sets. It's what my parents used to get us when we lived on a federal subsidy, in public housing. Got us Lego sets. And I never dreamt.
So I think especially like in the hip hop industry, so many time, and I asked this myself before, so many times they give references to things from the childhood like cartoons or Legos and stuff. Because and one friend one day told me, I asked him, why do you think that in the hip hop industry there's so many references to cartoons and things from our childhood? And what he said was very true. He said, because when you are a child, you have that unconditional happiness, that unconditional awe in front of the universe, in front of life. And when you see things from your childhood, you remember the lens through which you were seeing that cartoon, and that brings you back those nostalgic childhood vibes. And now you perceive whatever is in front of you, whether you made it an album cover, now that album will have attached to it that childhood vibe. This is so powerful because, for instance, if you were to look for the first time a childhood cartoon today at 30 years old, it wouldn't probably affect you emotionally as it did when you were a child, because you were just in awe in front of all these action colors and whatever. So I think that the choice of going for Lego, it's a really powerful choice. And I said you should watch it piece by piece. It's great.
That it would turn into this.
Yeah.
But at the time, it was like I was grateful for that. And this is way before there were any minifigs or anything. They were just bricks and pieces. And then also, like, right when we decided we were going to do it, the other thing that that really made it click for me is that, like, we had just had, we have 4 children. We have our 16-year-old Rocket, who he was here the last time. He's 16 now. And then we have 3 7-year-olds who we had just had. So
3
yeah.
at once.
Yeah, 3 at once.
Wow.
And they
Three
have
at
had
once.
Lego
Hold
sets,
up.
at different points in their lives.
Give the
So we always
flowers
get
to the
them.
queen, man.
It's very
Three at once.
generational.
Mm-hmm.
And
It's
I hadn't thought
generational.
about all the implications, but I just knew that my story, if it got objectified, that I might like it
Yeah.
enough to do it. What I didn't realize is that it objectified it so much that I was able to look at it and appreciate it beyond what I would see in the mirror. When you look in the mirror, most of the time, even when you're very grateful for your life and your existence, and even in your physical form, right? Because not everybody has that. Not everybody is happy with what they were born with, and we have to respect that too.
Mm-hmm.
But when you are, it's a thing I don't take for granted. But even when you're grateful for it, you still see your fears. You see your flaws. You see your insecurities. You see the guilt and pressure that you feel from people guilt bullying you into doing things you don't really want to do. Like something your boss may suggest you really don't want to do, but you say yes to anyway. You give into that guilt bullying, or family, or significant other, or community, or even voting party. Like, there's always these pressures, the things that you
Sense
really
of obligation.
obligation that you really don't want to deal with.
Yeah.
But it's on you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the pressures that come from that. But this allowed me to see beyond all those layers of distraction
Yeah.
and insignificance,
Yeah.
to see my true soul's purpose. And that is to be liberated, discover the tools of liberation and share them. with as many spirits as I can.
Yeah.
I mean, when
I
you,
love that you use the word objectification, because typically
Mhm.
we think of objectification as a negative in our society, but you're describing it as a way to distance yourself and actually see what it is.
yeah,
Beautiful.
thank you.
I literally did a video. I had to start with but I literally did a video where I say I literally did a video where I say about how important it is to document your life, even if just 20 people watches it. And that's what Pharrell just said. Basically, you see your situation objectified, and I loved how he explained when you look at yourself in the mirror, even at peak gratefulness, you are still perceiving all your flaws, your fears, your doubts, obligation, blah blah blah. But if you're able to objectify your situation and look at it from another perspective, which is not your perspective, but you're just seeing it from the outside, now all the flaws, all the doubts, all the obligations are not there anymore, and you can just see for whatever it is. So it's imagine Pharrell at the point where he reached in his career, being able to see his whole journey from the outside. And Pharrell is also saying, like, I have my own doubts, my own fears. So it's really a big lesson here, but let's keep watching.
Thank you. I mean, that's what happens when you get Lego-fied. You know, there's an objectification to you and also to your story.
Yeah.
And it makes it very relatable, because when you see Atlantis apartments in there, like, it doesn't look as heavy as it would have if it was a real live action documentary.
Yeah.
That's the power of Lego.
Yeah.
It allows other people to see things that their prejudices would not allow them to really take in, just because, oh, that's the projects.
It's a more poetic interpretation.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And open to, you can see what you want to see in Lego.
Yeah.
So did you film the scenes live action and then make?
How can you apply in your art, in your creations, in your work, this same concept? So he said that with Lego you don't have prejudice, you don't have nothing, you know. Lego creates this like black canvas where there is no ego involved, you know. He said that he was like portraying the life of the hood in Atlanta, and I'm actually not sure if it was Atlanta. I'm sorry if I gave the wrong one, but he was saying how you can even portray a situation such as the trenches and the hood with Lego in a way that can reach everybody without prejudice and without ego. So think about how can you deploy the same thing in your art? How can you make your art sometimes, or your creations as well, in a way, something that you want to present in a way which you don't want to have to deal with prejudice and stuff like that? You can use like this.
Them in Lego? How was it made?
Well, what I had said to Morgan when we first worked together, when I first pitched it to him to
Yeah.
see if he would do it, I was like, yo, I want you to shoot this documentary whatever way you want, because I love and respect what it is that you've done thus far. I think you're the best
Yeah.
at this, and you're the perfect person for this. But I want you to shoot it, and then I want you to throw all the
set the
footage away,
speed a
but
bit
keep the
higher,
audio.
so-
Oh,
Wow.
I want you to do it, and I want us to do it in Lego. And he goes, yeah, sure. And it was just that fast. And then he said yes.
Yeah.
Then we went to Lego,
Yeah.
and they said yes.
Great.
And then we went to Focus, and they said yes. And then they went to like Donna Langley over at Universal, and she said yes. And so when you think about it, like this film is like the sum of a lot of yeses.
Yeah.
And when you add them up, you get what impossible looks like.
Just gotta
It's
ask
something no one
it. You
has
just
ever
gotta
seen
ask
before.
for
Yeah,
it.
especially because I'm Black. I come from a marginalized community. You walking in there saying, you know, hey, we're going to show the projects, and we're going to make it so that everyone around the world will be able to understand it. They wouldn't get it.
Yeah.
But when you just say, hey, I just want to tell my life story through the guise of Lego because I want it to be relatable to people, then all the other details get filled in. And then as you're working on it, you realize all these other things that you can like put in there later if you need to, to make it even more rich, even more details about the life, and even more details about like these environments, and you know,
See how he didn't say it, but he wasn't a perfectionist. He said, just make it, and then once it's almost done, you can start enriching it with new scenes, new things. And so many times we like freeze out. At least I do. I just freeze because I'm like, yo, this needs to be perfect. This needs to be like this or that, and you start idealizing it, and it paralyzes you. But he literally just made a freaking documentary about his own life, and he said, yo, I'm just gonna release it and then I'm add stuff. So don't let this idealization of what creativity should look like paralyze you from actually taking action. Bro, this interview is crazy.
it just turned out Morgan really crushed it, you know.
How did you guys get Carl Sagan to be in it?
You know, I don't know. I mean, we got permission from the family, but
Yeah.
I was
It's just so
surprised when
cool.
he ended up in it because I'm such a Carl Sagan fan, you
That's
know?
why he's there. Makes sense.
Yeah, he's everything.
Is there really a statue of Neptune in Virginia Beach?
Yeah,
Really?
100%.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And how important was the beach growing up for you?
The beach, for me, you know, even though we live like maybe 10-minute walk from the beach, black folks didn't really go to the beach and swim like that. That wasn't like the thing to do. It wasn't that it was illegal, although Virginia Beach, 10 years before I was born, blacks were not necessarily welcomed. Blacks would swim in another city in Norfolk in an area called Ocean View. But Virginia Beach was pretty much like whites only.
But when you were growing up, what was the vibe?
I think there was residue of that energy.
I see.
We were welcome to do it. It was open for us to do it, but I don't know if we were necessarily welcomed. You know, even when I did my festival down there were like signs that said that if you cursed, you could get locked up. But then we know who was getting locked up when they were like cursing out loud down there in the ocean front. You know, or like you could get a ticket or a citation if the top of your underwear or boxers were showing above your shorts or pants.
Really?
Yeah, we had a lot of that. But the city wanted to do something different. And so when we did our festival, I think it changed a lot of energy down there because we couldn't do it alone. And the 30,000 students that weren't necessarily as welcome before, they couldn't do it alone either. It took everybody coming together and seeing the bigger picture. And I think
The
Virginia
power
Beach has
of
gotten a lot better.
community,
Still
the
got a lot of
power
work
of
to do.
community. And I'm just gonna skip the ad.
Tell me about the festival.
Well, that was just it. It was, 30,000 students that would come there every year on week 17 to blow off some steam right before exams. And they weren't particularly welcomed. And that's when like the whole Greek Fest thing happened and the riots and, National Guard. And it was a very tough time. And a lot of that residual energy was still laying around. And so they weren't necessarily being as supportive and as welcoming as they should have been to those students. So the chief of police, Chief Severa at the time, he asked me if I had any ideas, and we came up with something in the water. And that's where the festival came from. And I know we digressed a little bit, but that was like, I've always just given back to Virginia Beach and given back to the state of Virginia because that's what made me, good, bad, or indifferent.
In what ways do you feel like Virginia Beach made you? I believe it did.
Yeah.
But describe more, like what and why.
There wasn't a blossoming music industry there.
You were outside of it.
Yeah, we all were. Myself, Chad, Timberland, Missy, Shay. It wasn't really anything there. But when Teddy Riley moved in town, a lot of that changed and that gave us opportunities. And Tim and Missy went to Jersey and they were working a lot with Devontae Swing. Like things happened then, but even still, it wasn't that. But Virginia happened to be this really peculiar state that was in between New York, D.C. and Atlanta and Miami. And it was like people would just go there. All the hustlers would come down. They, and if they weren't necessarily hustling in the city, they were partying in the city in Norfolk and Virginia Beach. And it was just like this different time.
You think the beach played a role in that?
It was just like a thing. But musically, because we weren't as northern and we weren't the most southern, and we definitely weren't the Midwest or the West Coast, we listened to everything.
Yeah.
And I think that shaped us as, at least the group that I'm referring to now, like it shaped us as musicians. And I think it really shaped the area.
Imagine that environment, how crazy it must have been, like all this pool of different type of music. And I think that you can kind of hear it in the sound of Pharrell, in the sense that You know how certain artists, especially I think when you're coming up, you really get affected by your environment. And like, at least here, for example, in Europe, in Italy, we had like these competitions between the rappers and the rockers and the emos and all this stuff, and you kind of get influenced from it. But when you grow up in an environment where that does not happen, well, obviously it's like underground movements, but that's pretty cool. Like you get to find your own artistic sound and your own artistic imprint since childhood without being conditioned to fit into one of those boxes from your environment. That must be pretty
Yeah, because we
helpful.
loved anything that just was coming from any different area, but like amazing.
Yeah.
Then it got play and it got spin. And I think that developed our like taste buds to be eclectic, to like all kinds of music.
Yeah,
I mean,
there you
Virginia
go.
is a very like, it's a very interesting place that seems like it's just Normalville, but there's so many other like hidden talents, people with great taste. It wasn't reflective in what you've seen, but like for example, like one of the biggest Warhol collectors ever lived in Virginia Beach. People would know. We used to have this Buckminster Fuller geodesic dome down there that everybody performed at. I didn't even know, but like some of everybody performed there, and it sadly got torn down. But then we ended up acquiring that property to build like this whole big multi-use uh, venue and hotel, wave park, like all this other stuff. But it's like it's always been a magnet for very interesting people. The Edgar Casey and the ARE Foundation is down there.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, that's where he moved from Kentucky. He moved there.
Imagine having these places.
He
I
moved
love
to
how
Virginia Beach.
he says about a place it's a magnet for interesting people. That's where you want to be at if you want. There's a life beyond content and social media. That's very good to promote yourself, your brand, your music, your art, whatever. But then you have to go to these places. Like, I love how he said this place was a magnet for all type of interesting people. Imagine the people that you could have met there, the connections, the network. Oh, I love it.
So cool.
Yeah, no, it's a lot there. It's just I don't think that we've been very good at marketing it and celebrating it.
But maybe that keeps it what it is. Do you know what I mean? Like maybe sometimes the harder it is to get to, or the fact that it's a secret preserves it. Some things get watered down.